All right, hello, and welcome to this co-finale of the Tucson Vipers at the Colorado Spring Miners. And surprisingly enough, both these teams are 2-0. Colorado Springs upsetting Portland last week after dispatching a close game of El Paso in Week 1. And of course, Tucson taking care of business all season long. Not much to really say here. I don't really have a lot of hope in Colorado Springs. I think Tucson is a little bit too much for them, but obviously, they could prove me wrong. Let's go ahead and look at the expert picks here. What the? All right. So, normal scores across the board. And then James, I think he phoned it in. I don't really know if he knows who is playing today. But he thinks Vontae Maddox leads the defensive effort in a win for Colorado Springs. And a 44-9 win. If I see a 44-9 win, I'm going to be so shocked. But enough of that. Let's head into the game. And welcome to the Colorado Springs Stadium. Borrowed, of course, by the base version of the Denver Mountaineers. Because guess what? Denver is in Colorado. And their color schemes somewhat kind of match. Obviously, I didn't realize the logos are going to be there on the banners, but you're not going to be looking at the banners too much after this. And you don't even really get to see them unless you, really look out for them. So King will get a gain of 16, but of course that is a loss of 4 in the hidden yardage game. So Colorado Springs is going to be looking to potentially score here. But starting behind the 8 ball is not a really good look here. It's the motion of the man to the inside. Jennings, a little too slow, and all right. Edwards already injured on the first snap. Tevin Edwards, the 89 overall superstar. R.I.P., my guy. R.I.P. That was insane. Cozart back to pass, got time. Nearly intercepted. Some of you may be wondering, wait, why is Cole doing media member teams as their games? I thought they weren't going to do that. Well, we were. Here's the problem. I have a cursed machine. So, it is not fair if I record all 29 other teams' games and not the other 3. Now, Portland is currently owned by Pasta. So, technically, that goes in with the 29, as before, the media members would not handle performances by the other media members. But, most importantly, not our own teams. As Cole Curse Machine knows no bounds. And neither does the tight end for knowing how to catch. That'll be holding on the linebacker. Tucson. Under center is, of course, the quarterback, Tucson McFadden, the offensive rookie of the year. Back to pass. He's got a wide open man again. And again, they drop it. Roland Brenson. Ethan Harrelson. Not a great start today. 2nd and 10 at the 47. McFadden back to pass. He's got all day. He's going to run to the outside. And that linebacker cannot catch him. Oh my goodness. If it wasn't for number 27, that would have been a housed touchdown. Gain of 40 yards on that rush by Taquan McFadden, showing why he is the rookie quarterback of the year and the offensive rookie of the year last year. Robertson, gain of 10, 1st and goal. Trevor Robertson coming over from San Antonio last year. A key piece to their Julian Bowl win, and Julian Forbes too fast for the tacklers. He was in and out of that play before anyone knew what was happening. 52 yards, 40 of them coming by Mr. McFadden. 1st and goal for a field goal for some reason, but it doesn't matter. The PAT is good. They'll fix that another time. Tucson striking first in Colorado. Spencer with the deep kick. And King will take it, charging forward. Loss of about 4, they'll say 3 yards. Jackson injured on a special teams play, but he is not expected to return, but because it's a special teams, he will return. for next week, but not today. So unfortunately, they're going to lose that man as they dump it off to Tyler. Gain of about 2 yards. And of course, that was their left guard, so he'll be subbed in by number 73, the backup left tackle, Logan Yoho. Pray to God I pronounced that right. The enunciations for the rosters are gone, so I really don't have much to work with when it comes to figuring out a name, as I butcher things a lot, as Jennings. Gain of 9 on that 3rd and 2. And so, like I was stating earlier, the famous weave, right, guys? We all know that. We're back to the original topic. The Cold Curse has to attack every single team, all 32 to make it fair. Obviously, we're trying to get the most important teams out of the way, all the top-end teams that we think are going to make playoffs early, as that is intercepted by Jeffries. Mainly because we really don't want to put the Cold Curse on a team that's needing a playoff win, right? I'm taking all the worst games possible as often as possible, so that way, obviously, the best teams get the best performances. And what I mean by that, before some conspiracy theorist goes, oh my gosh, so he's picking the best teams to go to the... No. What we're saying is the 2 worst statistical teams on the schedule. So we've made a schedule into the season, and this schedule has ratings, and across the board we'll see these rankings, right? So if San Antonio and Virginia Beach were to play, that would be potentially a #1 game, and we wouldn't want the viewers to have to watch a crappy game between 2 really great teams. It'd be like watching the greatest show on turf take on, well, I mean, not even that, let's just say it's the Rams and Kansas City's 53-51 game or whatever that score was. But instead of getting that high score, all you get is a 13-3 Super Bowl match. Like, nobody wants that, right? So we're making sure that I take the lowest ranked games on that schedule. And of course, sometimes that does mean a really good team plays a really bad team, but they're ranked really low, so that's the game I have to get. But we're trying to make sure this Cold Curse is spread evenly out. And of course, obviously that means that everyone has to get infected at some point. This is a virus. And it's not a virus I want. I wish I could get rid of this virus because I hate watching quarterbacks perform poorly. I've had one good game with Reno, and right after the 3rd quarter, that dude went, I think, 1 for 11, and that just tanked his entire stat line. And it was not amazing. It was not fun. It was not really great. But this is one of those games, right? Tucson versus Colorado Springs. Technically, by all measures indicated when we were making the schedule, this really shouldn't have been a 2-0 versus 2-0 game. Maybe a 1-1 against a 2-0 Tucson. If El Paso had continued their performance from last year, it would have been an 0-2 Colorado Springs game. They're playing like they're 0-2, so, you know, that kind of helps the reasoning. But, yeah, so everyone gets infected at least once, and we're taking out all the teams that we think are going to be infected. Not infected, but we think the teams that are going to do the best. We're trying to get them out of the way early, so that way there's no qualms by owners talking about, hey, I did not think he was going to catch that. I was so quiet waiting for another drop, but McFadden makes the catch. And that's what's really going on, right? Because, again, it's great to be transparent because no matter what, you're going to know that I'm doing your game. You're going to see your quarterback stats here to go, oh my God, this is terrible. Now, if the curse continues to be terrible, I have considered moving on from recording and being a full-time graphics media member without the recording. But unfortunately, we don't have enough media members to cover that, so I cannot step back. And worst of all, I can't even change my computer, so we're stuck here. 1st and goal at the 1. Julian Forbes, 4 rushes for 30 yards. And he'll get a 2nd touchdown. And this Denver audience is just silent. I don't really know what to do. And I wouldn't know what to do either because my team is unexpectedly 2-0. And then the greatest statistical team just walked into my house. Like, oh, I don't think I want this. Not a lot of gameplay commentary. There's not really much to be had. I mean, Tucson is Tucson is my favorite to make the Jukin Bowl for the JFC. I apologize. That might have been the GFC. This Kozart back to pass. Nearly intercepted. As I'm trying to figure out what tab I'm trying to look through here. Yes, the GFC. So GFC South, Tucson, Mesa, Wichita, Albuquerque. Taken down. As Faulkner. And actually, I don't even know if that's right. So actually, what we found out was the Season 6 standings... That was fast. Just trying to sound like XQC, apparently. The Season 6 standings are technically inaccurate. The teams are in the wrong divisions. As King with a great catch over number 3. And as everyone, of course, knows, that's Corey Jeffries, who made the interception earlier. As Kozart pitched out to Jennings. Jennings with a lane. But you head over to the 32 teams, and they are correct. So Tucson is with Wichita, Albuquerque, and Mesa. So in the previous setting, Colorado, Vancouver, Salt Lake, and Portland, I believe, are the exact same, and they are. Virginia Beach, Delaware, Brooklyn, Richmond remains the same. Iowa, Minnesota, Pottsville, and St. Louis. And that is actually different. So that is Minnesota, St. Louis, Milwaukee, and Iowa. So team that switched out from there was Pottsville, as that is a strip sack followed by a dance number by Chambliss. Wichita, Albuquerque, Tucson, and Mesa are the new division. As I think... So Pottsville went from the north. And they went over to... Where did they go? What is that? That is the north. So they swapped with Milwaukee. So now Milwaukee is in the north of the GFC. And the JFC has Pottsville. I don't think anyone else changed for that. No, it's Louisville, Columbus, Pottsville. Oh, Fort Wayne has Patterson. 35-yard catch there. No, Fort Wayne is actually still there. So they're still there. The San Antonio division stays... Well, not the San Antonio. Well, I mean, it is the San Antonio division, but the Texas division stays the same. I believe Orlando's East all stayed the same. Birmingham as Hoffman with the sack. And that is correct. So it looks like really only 2 teams swapped. I think Minnesota was... Was Minnesota in a different division? Let's see. Minnesota, GFC North in Season 6. And they were called OK. They were called OKC. Where are they? Oh, they switched over to Minnesota. Across the board. I got you. But now they're missing. No, they're not. Here they are. So they were in Central. And then Season 5, we moved over to all these different things. All these different divisions. No, okay. So they've been the same. In the GFC North. And that, of course... It's kind of crazy. We had one giant... when you look at it, right, like the standings-wise, from Seasons 1 to 4, we had just kind of like open standings. So we didn't really have a name for anything. It was just kind of... What was it? We had a name for it, but I don't really know... I think it was Atlantic and Pacific, but that wasn't even really for, like, the conferences, right? That was something we just kind of threw together. At least for me, that's kind of the way I took it. The Pro Bowl, of course, the Atlanta All-Stars and Pacific All-Stars. Okay, that makes sense. Bethea, gain of 9 yards. You know, I think, honestly, the most surprising part about this redistribution of these teams is the fact that Minnesota... And again, I'm looking at the wrong thing because I'm looking at the Season 6 standings, not the 32 teams. So Minnesota has to compete with St. Louis, which, sure. Most importantly, they have to compete with the Milwaukee Bees. So Milwaukee, one of the top-end teams, actually beat Minnesota, by the way. So that is interesting. So that's a head-to-head, as Milwaukee's now 1-1. Now, in their old division in the JFC North, they would be last place. But since they're in the GFC North, I actually think, because of their point difference, they're ahead of Minnesota, above Pottsville, but below Iowa due to point difference. Because they have a negative 6-point difference, and Iowa has a flat 0. So they won by just as many as they lost by. They literally have a 45-45 point difference, which is kind of incredible if you think about it. It's Cozart over the middle. As far as stats, we really don't have a lot to talk about here. Gotta find something to talk about, because this is not it. We've already talked about the virus as Gilbert Mossing. My goodness. Let's go ahead and look at the Season 6 passing stats. We'll go ahead and find Colorado Springs. And then we'll go ahead and find Tucson. Quan McFadden, a 138 rating so far, 40 for 48, 83.3% completion, 606 yards, 2 touchdowns. Brandon Cozart, 77.2 rating, 24 for 48, a flat 50, but 425 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Then, of course, going with the rushing stats as we look over here. And that'll be a sack loss of 8, 4th and 18 by Faulkner. As we find Colorado Springs, and then we once again find Tucson. Reynolds for the first points of the game. And he doinks it in. 55-yard field goal is good. We have Tucson leading with Julian Forbes, 37 attempts on 188 yards, 5 touchdowns. Incredible. Marquise threat and Tony Jennings bring up the rear, with Tucson's Hill Montana bringing up the back end for carries over 10 with threat 130 yards, 1 touchdown, and Jennings 79 yards, 1 touchdown. I don't know what that throw was. McFadden just throwing that in the dirt. Shades of Tommy Turnovadeska, which actually, funny enough, McFadden throws again into the dirt. We've actually come up with a nickname for McFadden should he fall off the face of the cliff. And I have to find this. I think it was mid-passing, because all this man does is throw mid-pass level throws. Of course, that's why he's so effective. Not Turnovadeska, not a terrible nickname, but mid-passing. Definitely good for when you need a deep pass, and McFadden will give you a medium pass. You need to gain a 2, he's going to give you 8. You need to gain a 14, he's going to give you a gain of 8. This man, solid across the board. I joke, he was Offensive Rookie of the Year last year. He was the best rookie quarterback of the year. Potentially one of the greatest pickups by Tucson, snuffing out Memphis and Raleigh, as Cozart to a wide-open Tyler. And, of course, the Raleigh owner will say, no, of course, I always wanted James Segal, but if you look at that man's stats, and, of course, we will, because, again, what else do we have to do this game besides watch a belt-to-ass performance? Cozart wide open to King, and King almost had a wide-open touchdown. This will probably be a field goal attempt. No, they're going to go for one more time, and I can almost guarantee you they're going to go for a field goal, because Access Logic doesn't like for them to have anything less than 9 seconds on the clock. And they almost didn't need 9 seconds, because that almost got picked off. 8 of 18, Brandon Cozart, 135 yards, 1 interception. Cozart, pressure in his face, dropped, interception. As he will motion the man from the right to the far left. Cozart back to pass, 4-man rush, and that'll be dropped by Jennings once again. Runs, of course, will kick this field goal. And this is the importance of having a top-tier cornerback like Mr. Lamonte, as he is able to shut down the entire... And I said Lamonte Davis earlier, I apologize. I was looking at Ryan Davis's stats, because, of course, we all know I love my Ryan Davis. Lamonte Jackson as Patterson Jr. That's funny. Start the second half. There is no disrespect, obviously, to Lamonte Jackson. That man won San Antonio a Jugan Bowl. That man has a statue and has a lifetime supply of whatever the hell he wants in San Antonio. That man earned everything that he got. There is no disrespect there. Now, if he wants to take that as fuel, more than happy. Whatever gets you to that Jugan Bowl. Lamonte Jackson, potentially going to be one of the greatest prospects we've had in the NAGA. He's only 24, but he's already 96 overall. And I'm pretty sure if I head over here to the all rosters, as Forbes shockingly gets stopped on a short gain. We'll go ahead and look up overall, as we actually have to wait for the sheet to load, because otherwise it crashes. And it crashed. Okay, cool. Well, that was fun. Anywho, he's a top 10 player in the league, and he's only 24 years old. It's absolutely incredible. Obviously, the only other better player is ATG across the board. But, as I must mention, Jackson is a prospect. So he is one of the players that you could be and that you could put into the game. Of course, Abatangelo, Mr. ATG, is not a prospect. He is a randomly generated player. Ryan Davis was a former prospect, top of the league as well. So if you want to make a prospect and you feel like you don't really have a shot at being known, don't say that, as Tucson actually gets stopped, 4th and inches, because Lamonte Jackson is the greatest prospect to grace the server and the league, and has shown the importance of being a prospect, because he takes participation in the pick'ems every week, and he also makes sure that the team that he goes to is the most beneficial for him, right? So that's the thing as a prospect you've also got to think about. Yeah, you're going to go to the draft, and of course if you take the GFL route, you know, people can see how well you play, but you go to the draft, and a lot of people forget that as a prospect, you know, you have control over your player. Now, there's a bit of a gray area. I'll admit that, you know, like there's a pretty big gray area involving owners with control of the roster and players, prospects, saying they don't want to play, but I can also say trade me. If you have enough talent, again, that's the most important part, right? A lot of people forget that you can't just be like a 75 overall player and demand a trade, because why? Like, first of all, you're not even good enough to make most of the rosters. The only roster you might make is some of the expansion team rosters. And even then, I don't even think Wichita or Vancouver has a use for you. But you really got to have the talent, and you got to understand what scheme fits you, and you really got to work with ownership, and you got to work with other owners, right? So once your free agency period comes up, because it will, you also have to recognize what team is going to do the best for you, right? And when that happens, you really got to think hard about it, because, yeah, you can just go to any team, but if you just go to any team, well, then you're going to wind up on a team that can't win, or a team that looks like they're good enough to win the Jugan Bowl, but in reality, we all know they're not. So that can be the real big difference there, as Forbes just gets annihilated, my goodness. And Jackson has proven that, right? Jackson got drafted by the Portland Grizzlies. He was on that team for a time before being sent to Iowa, then being sent to St. Louis. St. Louis then, after being kind of pushed a lot by Lamonte Jackson to be traded, trades to San Antonio. San Antonio gives up a pretty big package for Lamonte Jackson. And, of course, obviously that in turn then leads to San Antonio having the greatest team in the history of the NAGA, going on to win the Jugan Bowl, albeit off of a missed field goal. But hey, you know, you got to make your field goals, and as I've always stated, you never know. That final drive could have been the drive that would have scored anyways. You'll never truly know. But at the end of the day, Lamonte Jackson is a Jugan Bowl winner, something that a lot of prospects cannot say, mainly because there's not a lot of prospects on San Antonio. So, obviously, Virginia Beach, San Antonio being the only two winners of the Jugan Bowl, leading to a lot of want for parity. And this parity, of course, can come in a lot of varieties: prospects, trading, taking rosters, and I think Tucson is the best version of this parity. Tucson coming from a team that couldn't make playoffs, couldn't win a lot of games. Annex comes in, turns the team around, gives them their first playoff win with Tommy Turnover Desco, which is insane. And then he goes on to make the playoffs again. He actually beats Minnesota during the regular season in a very close defensive game. He goes in the offseason, starts making trades, looking for better players, picks up a few players in the draft, and now here he is, 20-6 against Colorado Springs. And it doesn't look dominant on the scoreboard, but I mean, as you've all seen, I have nothing to talk about. Colorado Springs can't drive, and Tucson is basically just draining the clock. I mean, Tucson just wants to get out of here with limited injuries, and really after losing their defensive end, they kind of just want to end the game, and that's fair enough. Tucson will probably break open for a big touchdown now after saying all that, but that's okay. McFadden to the left side to Ethan Harrelson, gain of 26 yards. So I guess during this time, I can also talk about some of the things that owners ask me a lot, right? Mr. Cole, the guy who ran a team to 4 consecutive Jukin Bowl appearances and winning 3 of them. The biggest thing I can say for building a team is doing what Tucson has done, as that is the end of the third, entering the fourth quarter. Now, we're entering a new version of Axis football, and that is, of course, going to mean that we have a lot of changes. But, of course, across the board, everything will still remain the same. You need a good running game. You need a powerful offensive line. And you need to make sure that your punter and kicker are at the top of their game. A lot of people don't realize this, but punting and kicking, as this is going to be complete to Trice, gain of 44 yards. Kicking and punting is probably the most important aspect, and the Jukin Bowl kind of put a magnifying glass on that. You can run with a rookie kicker, touchdown Julian Forbes, 3rd of his day, and you can kind of see how well that goes. I mean, Virginia Beach did break a ton of records with their kicker. And he wound up having 50-plus extra points, you know, massive scoring offense. But their punter was also something very important. Every time you fail a drive, you need to punt that ball deep as possible and as accurate as possible inside the 20, because without that, well, you're going to give up drives like Colorado Springs has, where it's, okay, we're starting at the 25, starting at the 28, starting at the 30, and that's more and more yards that you need to protect. As Cozart now, loss of 6, sacked by Michael Wells, the former linebacker from San Antonio. And Tucson has done this very well. They have a great run game. They've got a great defensive line as well, packing it up there. Their secondary. The secondary is also something very important. First of all, you need to have a cornerback 1. That's the most important part. If you can't have a cornerback 1, you're just going to give up long drives, big pass plays, and it's just going to end terribly for you. You need a good free safety. He needs to be able to return punts very well. You need, because right now that's what we're dealing with. Axis 26 should fix that, so you shouldn't need that too much. But you need a good free safety. You need a speedy back end as well. Got a lot of wide receivers with lots of speed, such as Tucson is showing here, and especially with Virginia Beach's run game. And that's another thing a lot of people don't think about. Cornerbacks are your last line of defense. A lot of people don't think about that, but they really are. And having a running back who's 223 pounds bulldozing your 187-pound defensive back is not exactly the thing you want to see during a need-to-have-it crucial drive. So you need to have speedy wide receivers with good tackling and the ability to man cover, because eventually you're going to get into a point where the offense and the opposing owner has a really good knack for calling plays. And they've got a really good player. Let's say Marcellus Walker, Daquan Fowler. You know, go ahead and look at Tucson's wide receiver group over here with Ronnie Patterson Jr., one of the top-end wide receivers of the league, as Robbie Mays, former Virginia Beach Mariner in the Jukin Bowl. And so you're going to have to make sure they've got good coverage, good tackle, and good speed. Linebackers are very important if you're running a 3-4, but not so important if you're running a 4-3. In the 4-3, you need to make sure that your defensive ends are fast, your defensive tackles can block shed, and you need to make sure that your linebackers are adequate enough at speed. Now, I didn't say coverage because there's nothing you can really do for coverage against a lot of these wide receivers. Your linebackers are just going to kind of give that up. but you need to have adequate speed, right? Around, I'd say 78 to 82 speed is probably like the honey spot for like where you need a linebacker to be. Anything less than that, not good enough. Anything more than that, yeah, that's great. You look at your offensive line, Pottsville kind of being the ones to show off that, and that's, of course, the reason you need a good defensive back, is King with a great catch, and, of course, that was number 1, Lamonte Jackson, on that coverage. But I think he actually... I think he's sort of checked out for the game. He's already done his most part. Lamonte has ensured the win. And, of course, he's one of the highest competitors the league has ever seen, so giving up a couple passes is perfectly okay in my book, since he is a championship winner. It's Cozart back to pass. First down there. Never mind, they'll call him short. And, of course, obviously here is where you need to have a speedy running back. You're 3rd and inches. You don't need to pass the ball. You need to run the ball. You need to get it to the first down marker. Now, of course, they've got... I don't know how that got completed, 11-yard gain. Now, that was a really great pass call there. Shotgun X corner. You got the fullback and the running back running. They were both wide open. Easy first down. For some reason, Cozart chose the most difficult pass over the middle with a linebacker in his face. And, of course, you need to make sure that you've also got enough blocking on the tight end side. If your tight end cannot block on a crucial need-to-get-it run play, you're going to wind up with a lot of plays where your tight end gets obliterated or just kind of ran past. And that is intercepted. Michael Wells, and he is a slow old man, so he will not be returning a pick 6. Taken down by number 16. As that, of course, is Amir Daniels, the wide receiver number 2. And Tucson will take back over. 2 minutes and 51 seconds left. Forbes will stiff arm a man. And that's sort of the genuine consensus of building a roster, right? And a lot of people asked me, and I've told a lot of people, you know, you really just kind of got to look at how you think things would go, right? If you're running a running back behind a tight end, don't you think it'd be logical that the tight end should know how to block? If you're throwing a short pass game, don't you think it should be crucial that a wide receiver or a tight end is fast in the route running? It's a short pass. It's not meant to be an 85 speed running back, which I know that sounds fast, but in terms of how fast this league has gotten, 85 is basically the minimum for the speedsters around here. You need fast players, right? And so it's like, okay, logically, right? You want to blitz. Well, you need a fast defensive line, a fast linebacker core. Okay, you want to have coverage. Well, you better have a really stout secondary that is fast enough to cover and good enough in coverage to also stop the pass. I mean, it's just simple stuff, and I don't think a lot of owners think about this a lot. I think they really just think about, how do I get the pass game? Okay, let me get a fast wide receiver, and I really only need wide receiver 1, and then from there I can kind of go from there. And that's, of course, catching is crucial, right? I'll do it like this, right? Your wide receiver 3 probably needs to have a higher catch rate than your second wide receiver, because your third wide receiver is usually the one running the slot. And the slot like that right there is, Jesus, dropped interception there, is a very good reference for why you need to have catch so high for them. Because obviously in a perfect world, all 3 of your wide receivers would have a really great catch rating. But your slot wide receiver really needs to have good catch, because otherwise you're going to run into plays like that, where they're running across the field, about a gain of 6 maybe, or a first down if you're lucky, and they drop it. Or they're not good enough to catch the ball, and the coverage outperforms the catch stat. A lot of yapping going on today. Dion Core, encroachment, 2nd and 4. And yeah, that's sort of the philosophy for how I built my team. I know it seems easy, obvious, but you'd be shocked by how many owners simply do not understand how to build a team. And we actually have quite a handful of Doc Rivers in this team. Lots of coaches who, they don't know how to actually do anything. They just kind of, you know, they make the team and they get confused why it's not working. It's like, well, buddy, if you took the time to learn, you'd know 100%. I'm not gonna say names because that's my opinion, but we definitely got a couple of Doc Rivers in here. We also got a couple of Brad Stevens in here who are really good coaches, but the team is just not good enough. And once those teams get good enough, you're gonna start seeing it. And that, of course, number 1 for me, Brad Stevens wise, is of course Annex. who was showing it today with Tucson as the final 32-6. Julian Forbes, 20 rushes, 83 yards, 3 touchdowns, as I have a hiccup. Michael Wells, 1 interception, 1 sack, 1 TFL. Brandon Cozart, 14 for 35, 203, 2 interceptions. Taquan McFadden, 11 for 19, 194, but no touchdown passes. McFadden with a 93 rating. Cozart with a 36. Of course, you can see here the differences. Lots and lots of passes for chunk gains for McFadden. Sacks, 4 for Tucson, 3 turnovers for Colorado Springs, and letting up 1 sack. Of course, rush yards. I mean, it wasn't a total dominant game, right? Stats, scoreboard won't show that, but I mean, this was a total domination game. And we're probably going to go ahead and look at the defensive backs here soon, as McFadden was credited with a 40-yard run, but of course, due to a sack, lost it 2. Of course, you can see here, just spread evenly across the board, 44, 35, 20, 50, 40. I mean, it's beautiful. Good dispersion. I don't know the actual word I'm looking for. It's not there. Michael Wells showing that he is a top-end talent of the league and why he is a Jugan Bowl winner. Zach Faulkner, of course, showing to be his replacement soon. Interception, Michael Wells, Corey Jeffries, TFLs. I'm not even going to pronounce that first name, Joshua. Michael Wells. Deflected passes, and this is where it is, right here in the secondary. Raymond Brooks, Kenny McKenzie, Cameron Galbraith, and I'm pretty sure... Nope, never mind. Lamonte Jackson, Michael Wells, Zach Faulkner, Dwayne Chambliss, and Corey Jeffries. That is 2, 4, 6, 12... 16, 20, 21 deflected passes, and 1 forced fumble, and 1 recovery. Of course, there's the returns, there's the kicking. And there you go. Every single incomplete pass was a deflected pass. If the DBs got their hand on it, it was deflected, or it was intercepted. That's the power of a secondary. And that's exactly why you build your pass game, your pass defensive game to be like that. Now, of course, King did get 128 yards. But again, 4 for 9, 5 for 6, 3 for 5, 1 for 4. I mean, really locking them down there. Lone sack by Keith Hoffman. 4 TFLs, not enough to regress the offensive line, I believe. Deflected passes, of course, 5. Moyes, Maddox, and Charles. Of course, returns here. Of course, 5 of... So, 3 passes were dropped, essentially, or just simply incomplete. There was no drop, so it was just simply not in the hands of a receiver, so it was a terrible pass. But again, there you go. That's the importance of a secondary. Go ahead, and I didn't pay attention to injuries at all game. Tevin Edwards was the lone injury for Tucson at the very start. And Colorado Springs, Kwame Jackson, knee injury, offensive line. Well, that'll do it. I will see you all next time.